the charter for the Islamic Resistance Movement, Hamas. What I've done here is divided it up into 5 major sections, but I'd like to actually start with Article 8. This is on the second full page of the text. It's the motto of the Islamic Resistance Movement. Allah is its goal. The messenger is its leader. The messenger being, of course, Muhammad. The Quran is its constitution. Jihad is its methodology. And death for the sake of Allah is its most coveted desire. Does not leave a lot of room for negotiation there. Continuing with the first part here, who is Hamas, intro up through Article 7, we can see quite easily that this is an extraordinarily Islamic organization. Right here in Article 1, the Islamic Resistance Movement. Islam is its system. From Islam it reaches for its ideology, fundamental precepts, and worldview of life, the universe, and humanity. And it judges all its actions according to Islam, and is inspired by Islam to correct its errors. In Article 5, this is repeated, the notion of Islam guiding life. This is an integral part of the religion. After all, the word Islam means submission to the will of Allah. There's no God but God, and the Prophet is his messenger, the beginning of Surah Fatiha, the beginning of 5 daily prayers. Within these first 7 articles, there's also a great sense of history. We see in Article 7, in the second column, the Islamic Resistance Movement is a link in a long chain of the jihad against the Zionist occupation, which is connected and tied with the initiation of the jihad of the martyr Izz-al-Din al-Qassam and his Mujahideen brothers in 1936. This is a reference to the Arab Revolt, which was nominally not against Zionist occupation, but rather against British occupation in the terms of the mandate after World War I. If we turn now to the second section I've outlined, strategy of Hamas, Articles 9 through 14. One in particular stands out. That is Article 13, directed towards peace solutions and international conferences. It should come as no surprise that Hamas views international peace conferences and efforts with disdain. Quote, "From time to time, the invitation is made for an international conference to look into solving the problem. Some accept and some reject the idea for one reason or another, asking for some condition or conditions to be fulfilled in order to agree to attend and participate in the conference. Due to the Islamic Resistance Movement's knowledge of the participating parties of the conference and the participants' past and present opinions and stands on Muslim interest, the Islamic Resistance Movement does not perceive that the conferences are able to deliver the demands, provide the rights, nor do justice to the oppressed. Those conferences are nothing but a form of enforcing the rule of the unbelievers in the land of Muslims. And when have the unbelievers justly treated the believers?" Now to the third major section, the training of jihadis, as I've titled it, from Articles 15 through 18. We see that the Islamic Resistance Movement is not simply a guerrilla organization that conducts terrorist attacks. It's something much, much larger than that. There's a great emphasis here in Article 15 on education. In particular, in Article 16, quote, "We must train the Muslim generation in our area, an Islamic training that depends on performing the religious obligations, studying the Book of Allah very well, the prophetic narration, the Sunnah, the Islamic history and heritage from its authentic sources with the advice of specialists and scholars." The Islamic Resistance Movement, then, is a kind of reform of society movement, and it's just not limited simply to the liberation of Palestine. This way it's very different from Fatah or the PLO, avowedly secular, if not even Marxist organizations. Hamas is something very, very different indeed. If we look at Article 17, the role of Muslim women, we find an attitude that would not be out of place in Saudi Arabia. The Muslim woman has a role in the battle for the liberation, which is no less than the role of the man. For she is the factory of men. Recall that the Saudi educational system prepares women for a life of motherhood and housewifery. What we have here in the Charter of the Islamic Resistance Movement is a very similar attitude towards women, seeing them as reproductive vessels and mothers and little else. If we turn to the activities of Hamas, Articles 20 and 21, we can see further that this is an organization bent on changing society. The liberation of Palestine is just part of that larger goal. The social welfare programs we see here in Article 20 are actually quite progressive and speak to a larger sense of purpose. It goes far beyond the goals of the PLO, Fatah, and other secular resistance movements of the 1960s and 1970s. This is something quite different indeed. Finally, a great deal of this document is devoted to the enemies of Hamas, from Article 22 onwards. What we see here is an intense paranoia, an intense distrust of the non-Muslim world. We have allegations here that are truly remarkable and seem to posit some kind of white, male, non-Muslim cabal directing world events here. They're behind the French Revolution, the Communist Revolution, and most of the revolutions here and there which we have heard of and are hearing of. With wealth, they form secret organizations throughout the world to destroy societies and promote the Zionist cause. These organizations include the Freemasons, the Rotary and Lions Clubs, and others. My dad is in the Rotary Club, and I am fairly certain that he is not part of an international conspiracy to keep Muslims under the thumb of the West and of, quote, non-believers. If we turn to Article 27, we find something very interesting. Discussion of the Palestinian Liberation Organization. This is an interesting article because it at once discusses its close relationship, camaraderie, shared goal between the PLO and Hamas. But there's a giant but in there. Condemns the secularism of the PLO. Says secularist ideology is in total contradiction to religious ideologies. Believes that the PLO, by extension Fatah, were formed in the cauldron where foreign ideologies had penetrated into Palestine. As it says here, the situation that surrounded the formation of the organization, PLO, and the chaotic ideologies that overwhelmed the Arab world due to the ideological invasion that befell the Arab world since the defeat of the Crusades 700 years ago, and the ongoing consolidation of Orientalism, missionary work, and imperialism. The organization, the PLO, adopted the idea of a secular state.